Hello friends, myself Nana Satpute. In the today's discussion, we will discuss something about the pigments. I am giving my WhatsApp number here and email address. For any query, you can feel free to contact me through WhatsApp or through email. I will try to be in touch with you. After this session, we will be able to define the term pigments and paints, explain the role of paint, differentiate good and inferior pigments because in the current situation there are so many pigment manufacturers. Then how will it be classified? This one as a good pigment and this one is a bad pigment. As per the requirement, we have to select the different type of pigments as per the performance required, quality of paint required, and application areas. Then we'll discuss classification of pigments. Then we'll discuss role of organic and inorganic pigment in the coatings, difference between extender pigments and true pigments, then composition of pigments, then its physical and chemical properties, and testing methods used for the pigment testing. Because quality is very important criteria, so we have to test each and every pigment before sending it to the market actually. So let's start from the introduction to paint. So paint is defined as the homogeneous mixture of pigment, resin, additives and solvents which gives decoration and protection to the surface when applied thinly on surfaces. This is the basic definition of the paint. Particularly paint, it is a combination of pigment, resin, additives and solvents. These are the four main ingredients particularly used for the manufacturing of pigment. Apart from that, four raw materials, nature of each and every raw material may be different, chemical class may be different, but broadly classified they are pigment, resin, additives and solvents. In this discussion, we will discuss more detail about the pigments and I will try to make the different sessions on resin, additives and solvents. So basic function of paint we generally apply for the different purposes. The purposes may be decoration, that may be a protection, and that may be a functional. These are the broad view of the purpose of coatings or paint. Paint is nothing but the coating, or particularly those material we use for protection of rooftops of the house. Exterior we generally call as architectural paint. They are particularly latex base and they gives aesthetic appearance to the object. It provides good aesthetic appearance and enhance the look of the object. And protection is nothing but to protect the bare metal or base metal from the different climatical conditions. In industry, we use the different type of steel structures for constructing the different sheds, pipelines, then cargoes, ships, railway wagons, motor vehicles are manufactured from the different metals. And every metal have tendency to go it into its original position, that is nothing but the corrosion. The rate may be different, that may be depend upon the different climatical conditions, but that is there. So to avoid the formation of corrosion and deterioration of the metal, because when the material get corroded, it will lose its strength and mechanical stability. So shape may be changed, and particularly it hamper on the look of the objects. So the first purpose in a protection to avoid the contact of that bare metal into the atmospheric climatical conditions. So for the protection, we have different mechanisms. Coating, it is a physical mechanism to protect the base metal. Then there is a chemical protection mechanism also there. That time we use the different type of metals like zinc and other metals. Then next function of the paint or coating, that is functional in post office, particularly we see the post office sheds or fire brigade car sheds, then different pipelines in the chemical industries. Each color plays a significant role. As per the color, red color shows it is a harmful or carcinogenic chemicals. Green, it is safe for mankind, and yellow, they are in between. So as per the color coding, we use the different colors for better understanding or to avoid the accident in chemical industries. So this is all about the uh, role of paints. So that paint is manufactured from the different raw material that we already discussed. They are particularly pigment, resin, additives, and solvents. Solvents are generally used. They are the liquid in nature. There are some aromatic, aliphatic, hydrocarbons, particularly used for the paint manufacturing. The basic role or functions of the solvents is to thin down the material and to provide proper viscosity to the material. Then additives are the material that is used to enhance the properties of the coating. They are used in a very little quantities to alter the surface properties or rheological properties like viscosities, flows, film formation, evaporation rate. They are also good propellant dispersion agents. And resin, it is the heart of coating that provide stickiness to the coating. That means when you apply the coating onto the surface, that binding property provided by the resin. And pigment, it is a powdery material, solid, finely divided particles that is responsible to give the color to the material. So now we'll start from the first main important raw material for the coating, that is pigment. Pigment, it is a naturally occurring material and have been used as a colorant from prehistoric times. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence that early humans used paint for aesthetic purposes such as body decoration. Nowadays we are also using the different type of pigments for the body decoration, like talcum powder, nail polishes or nail enamels, hair dyes, then eyebrow liners, kajal. And before the industrial revolution, many pigments were known by the locations where they were produced. Now we classify the pigment as per their chemical constitutions and properties. But in ancient time, the main location where they were produced as per the name implies. Pigment based on minerals and clays often before the names of the city or region where they were mined. As per the mining and source, the name implies. They are particularly raw cineas. Bird cineas comes from the cinea. The cineas is an earth pigment containing iron oxide and manganese oxide. It is a natural state. It is yellowish brown, is called as raw cinea. When heated, it becomes a reddish brown and it is called as a burnt cinea. It takes name from the city state of Cinea where was produced during the manufacturing. Amber. Amber is a natural brown or reddish brown earth pigment that contain iron oxide and manganese oxide again. Amber is darker than the other similar earth pigments because Cinea is also a earth pigment, Amber is also a earth pigment, but darkness is varies. As per the darkness, they were classified. Orchards and cineas, it is a natural form. It is called as raw amber. When heated, the color becomes more intense and then becomes known as burnt umber. These pigments were among the easiest to synthesize, and chemists created modern colors based on the originals that were more consistent than color mined from the original bodies. So, as per the source consideration and need of the current industrial realization and consumption in the paint industry, the sources are limited. So, we have to create all these material into the laboratory. When you consider the natural pigment and synthetic pigments, natural pigments contain lot of impurities and synthetic pigments are free from impurities. So they gives the better color style. So pigments are insoluble, fine solid particle. They are powdery material which gives color and opacity to the paint when dispersed properly into the coating system. The pigment are used in paint formulation to carry out one or more of the following tasks. Because when you add the material into the coating system, it means it having some performance properties, aesthetic properties. So pigment provides color to the coating material. Whichever color we will be able to see for the paint material that is provided from the pigment. It also provides hiding power or obliterate previous colors. It improves the adhesion of the paint film. Some metallic pigments plays a very important role for providing the good adhesion on the base metal. It also used to reduce the cost and also used to reduce the gloss of the coating system. All pigments should be insoluble in the medium in which they are used. That pigment must be chemically inert, free from soluble salt and unaffected by normal temperatures. It should be easily wetted for proper dispersion because dispersion plays a very important role. If the pigment not dispersed properly, it shows some adverse effect during the paint application or after the paint application. So it must be properly dispersed. For proper dispersion, we use sometimes wetting and dispersing agent. That pigment must be non-toxic in nature, non-corrosive in nature, and having a low oil absorption characteristics. If the pigment having a higher oil absorption value, that means we have to add more binder into it for the providing better adhesion, and it requires uh, paying the higher cost. So that pigment must have minimum or low oil absorption characteristics. They should be durable and resistant to light. Some pigments get faded. The pigments are basically color organic or inorganic material. If the organic materials exposed to the exterior climatical conditions, it will get fade. So that must have maximum light stability or UV resistance when used for the exterior purposes. I will categorize the that is a good pigment and that is a bad pigment. So uh, here we have some points for the discussion when we consider this is a good pigment and this is a bad pigment. So good pigment characteristics, good pigments possesses the following characteristics: that pigment must be available in minimum or low cost, that must possesses high purity, that means low impurities, it contains low impurities, excellent color stability for exterior use as well as interior use, good heat and light stability. Some pigments we are used for a coating of the engine parts, silencer parts, chimneys. Uh, that time pigment must be provide good resistance to that particular material. Good weather and chemical stability, should be non-bleed in paint media. Bleeding is nothing but to impart its original color to the other material, and pigment must be non-bleed in paint media, and it must be non-toxic in nature. These are the good pigment characteristics that must be considered while selection of the any pigment material. So now we'll discuss the general classification of the pigments. Pigments are classified basically into three categories. They are inorganic pigments, organic pigments, and metallic pigments. Natural pigments and manufactured pigments in the inorganic pigment, and both natural and manufactured pigments are true pigments and extender pigments. Organic pigments contain lakes, dyes, and toners. They are manufactured pigments. And we have next class of pigments, that is metallic pigments. Metallic pigments are nothing but the metal powder. They are maybe aluminum, zinc. Now we'll see some examples of organic pigment, inorganic pigment, and metallic pigments. So in inorganic pigments, we have white pigments, color pigments, metallic pigments, and extenders in inorganic category or class of the pigment. In white pigment, we have titanium dioxide, zinc oxide, antimony oxides, and white lead. Color pigment, iron oxide, red lead, cadmium red, and zinc chromates. These are the we have taken a few names here for only for your understanding and examples. Metallic pigments are aluminum pigment, zinc pigment, and lead pigments. Extenders are talc, china clay, barites, mica, silica, whitings. Look for organic pigments. Organic pigments are particularly color pigments. They are yellow, red, blue, green, and family of the different type of colors. So benzidine yellow and hansa yellow for yellow pigments. Red pigments, toluidine red, rubine toner, signal red, and permanent red. Blue, phthalocyanin blue, and green in contain phthalocyanin green. Those heavy metals are calcium, barium, and magnesium or manganese. Toner is sometimes applied to a pure diester pigment. It contains 0% impurities and they are very intense or dark color. Lakes, these are the reduced pigment prepared by precipitation onto white base such as aluminum blank peaks, china clay. They are extender based pigments. So now we'll discuss the role of organic and inorganic pigment. Uh, Having hiding property and contribute color to the paint film. These are the two common roles of organic and inorganic pigment. Inorganic pigments that gives the white shades from the TiO2 and zinc oxide. In fire retardant paints, we use the zinc oxide or antimony oxides. In heat resistance paint, we have a chromium green, black shades like a carbon black, high thermal stability and oil absorption value, no bleeding, and good light fastness. Organic pigment use the bright shade, good chemical stability, and good bleed and light fastness resistance to the coating. This is the common role of organic and inorganic pigments. Now we will discuss the role of organic and inorganic pigments as per the source, as per their characteristics and as per their physical and chemical properties. So in particular, inorganic pigments and organic pigments. Source of the inorganic pigment, they are minerals, natural, and organic pigments are chemically refined or synthetic. Color, inorganic pigments are often dull as compared to organic pigment. Organic pigments are bright in nature. The tinting strength or coloring strength of inorganic pigment is low because they are dull in nature, and organic pigment is very high because they are bright. Opacity, inorganic pigments are opaque or transparent. Organic pigments are opaque. Opaque means they are able to hide the base surface. And some inorganic class pigment, they are extenders. They are transparent in wet conditions and they give hiding in a dry condition, called as a wet hiding and dry hiding. Light fastness, inorganic pigment have very good light fastness and organic pigments are poor to good light fastness. When you see the solubility, inorganic pigments are soluble in solvents, but organic pigments have little degree of solubility. Degree of safety, inorganic pigments may be unsafe because it contains, sometimes it contains metals, heavy metals, and organic pigments are usually safe. Chemical stability, inorganic pigments are sensitive to the chemicals. Organic pigments are good chemical stability, or they are neutral towards the chemical. Cost, inorganic pigments having a moderate cost. Organic pigments have expensive as compared to inorganic pigment. Particle size, we have compared to organic pigment higher particle size, and organic pigments having a finer particle size as compared to inorganic one. So now we'll discuss the difference between extender pigment and true pigments. So true pigments are basically organic or inorganic in nature. Extender pigments are available in only organic in inorganic in nature. True pigments are manufactured. Extender pigments are processed minerals, or they can be manufactured in the laboratory or in the industry. True pigments provide the opacity, but extender pigments does not. They are particularly transparent because they possesses the very low refractive index. True pigments are available in many colors. Extender pigments are available only in white color. True pigments show some bleeding because they are available in the color form. Extender pigment does not have bleeding tendency because they are only white in nature. Difference, generally they are used in the glossy finishes. Extenders are used in the matte finishes or primer coat or intermediate coats. These true pigments are generally used for the top coats. They are bright. Naturally occurring extenders are dull. Synthetically extenders are bright also, and they also provide a very clean tone. High cost, extenders are low cost. They are available in the market in very minimum cost. So as I already explained, true pigments are used for the top coats, and extender pigments are used for primers and undercoats. True pigments are heavy pigments. Extender pigments are support or anti-settling pigments. Sometimes some extender pigments are also used as the additives pigment because they provide a good brushability, and they provide a good viscosity to the material, an anti-settling property to the material, and extenders are also used to reduce the cost of the final paint. These are the some general physical and chemical properties that will be discussed in the next coming session. I will prepare a separate session on these properties. In the today's discussion, we have discussed this paint, role of paint, different type of raw materials we use for the paint. Then also we have discussed the pigments, type of pigments, sources of pigments, classification of pigments, in their examples. Hope so. It will help to enhance your knowledge. For more update and new information, please like, share, and comment. Thank you.